The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Sometimes dreams do, in fact, come true. But in the case of the Florida Panthers and hockey in South Florida, it happened a second time.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers.
The Florida Panthers defeat the Edmonton Oilers by a final score of 5-1 in Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Final to clinch their second straight Stanley Cup championship and the first team since the late 80s Edmonton Oilers to clinch on home ice, the first team to clinch in back-to-back years since the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the first team to clinch in back-to-back 82-game seasons since the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2016 and 2017. And Jacob, wow. What an incredible ride for the Florida Panthers. As if you can't tell by watching this on YouTube, I'm here at Amerant Bank Arena as the background as the Florida Panthers celebrated the championship. Welcome to the show, and it was an absolute dominant performance by the Florida Panthers. 2-0 after the first period. Goals by Sam Reinhart and Matthew Tkachuk. Sam Reinhart scored 4 times, including 2 empty netters, and it really just came down to the Panthers just being the anaconda and squeezing the life out of Edmonton and them having nothing left.
Yeah, I mean, that was classic Florida Panthers hockey right there, beginning to end. They've been dominant in first periods in this series. Tonight was no different, and then just the stranglehold on defense. I've never seen Connor McDavid struggle just to create some breathing room and space the way he did in the past 2 games, but especially tonight. They came with the perfect tempo, the perfect pressure, the perfect aggressiveness needed for a closeout game. So it was perfect hockey beginning to end.
No doubt. And this day for the Florida Panthers all started with, it started for me just going to the rink for morning skate with a lot of confidence. And the confidence really started right before Game 5 for me. When you talk about the goalie change, despite the comebacks in Games 1 and Game 4, and then just maybe a little bit of gamesmanship that Carter Verhaeghe played with being on the ice on the other rink at the SeatGeek rink in Fort Lauderdale, and then the Edmonton Oilers staffers like complaining that he's there when them wanting to get on the ice earlier. But how the Florida Panthers continue to protect the blue line right there and in the neutral zone. The first goal, a poor pass by Matthias Ekholm, and then a great individual effort by Sam Reinhart to get around Evan Bouchard. And then instead of Ekholm using body, he uses stick and then beating Stuart Skinner on the far side. And then the second one for the Panthers, Anton Lundell denies his own entry, and then Eetu Luostarinen finds Matthew Tkachuk, and then he scores with a screen in front. And 13-4 in the first period of this series. The Panthers had a lead in every single game. My goodness. And it was contributions from everyone. For the Panthers in this series, they're the second team to have 3 players to score 5 goals in a series. The second team. And there's so many comparisons to the Florida Panthers team to the 80s when it comes to the Oilers, the Islanders, and what the Panthers have been able to do as far as like the true throwback team. And the fact that they scored 90-plus goals in a playoff run as a team that's known for tough defense, quick breakout passes, heavy forecheck, my goodness, was it continue like the depth of the Panthers? My goodness, up and down the lineup. It was like there's this one song by Tenacious D called Beasel Boss. It's what Dave Grohl says, "I am complete." The Panthers were absolutely complete in this one.
Yeah, if you look at the lineup, it's a team without weakness, and I don't think you can really put any team up against this Panthers roster and expect them to win a 7-game series. I mean, Edmonton's a fantastic team, and we know what it looks like when a team is motivated after a Stanley Cup final loss and they come back and they're hungry to try to win it. That was the Panthers last year, and that should tell you everything you need to know about what this year's Panthers team was. Because Edmonton had that, and the Panthers still found a way and beat them more handedly and quicker than they did last year. The stat that stood out the most to me from this series is the fact that the Panthers broke an NHL record for most time led or most time leading in a Stanley Cup final. I mean,
255.
The fact that it went to 6 games is crazy enough. But again, it was very similar to, if you look back to the conference final last year against New York, against the Rangers, Panthers really dominated that series beginning to end. It went to 6, but both Ranger wins were overtime wins that were somewhat fluky. I think it was really similar situation here. The Oilers had a couple of overtime wins, made the series a little bit artificially closer than it actually was. But overall, this was the Panthers brand on display for an entire series. And I think over the course of the playoffs, the defense first mentality was there. But the depth on offense, I don't really think I've ever seen anything like it. I would put this team up against any team over the last 20 to 25 years, and I think this team would win a series against anybody. It was really, really a team without weakness. Credit to the staff keeping everybody healthy and recovery and all of that, because the Panthers also did a great job of staying healthy throughout this run. Didn't really have to eat into their depth too much. They had a couple of games missed with suspension, a couple of games missed with injury, if you think about Reinhart, for example. But the depth on this team to fight through those things and really not lose a beat the entire time, I thought it was remarkable. It was as dominant a playoff run as you're going to see.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we stepped on the ice after the game, after the Stanley Cup was skated around, I asked AJ Greer about how tough it was to play the first 2 games of the final and to finally for him to get back into game 3. And he said it was emotional. That's for him to use that. I'm just like, okay, I'm just thinking, okay, you want to still help your team win. You know that your team at least help you, give you a chance to at least go back to Sunrise tied 1-1, but the hunger, the desire to get back into the mix, and whenever you even if it's not to the fault of his own getting hurt, which we saw at the end of the Carolina series in Game 5. I mean, he tried going into the third period, took a shift, and then didn't return after that. So just the fact that the grit, the will to win, and I mean, you mentioned the injuries to Reinhart. I mean, Brad Marchand, even when he got traded to Florida, he wasn't healthy to begin, and the fact that they made that trade with the conditions that they put, with 50% played of playoff games, in order for that condition to be a second to a first, and for the Panthers to make the conference final. Everything just fell into place on just the amount of risk versus the reward. And obviously we're talking about a Stanley Cup championship, so the reward is so big. And I mean, I'm looking right now at that 2024 banner, and I'm just thinking, wow, they get to add another one. So the whole banners fly forever. I mean, it's such a cliche statement, but my goodness, I'm sure Bill Zito is like looking like Dr. Evil in Austin Powers whenever he's thinking about the amount of trades he's been able to pull off.
Yeah, absolute masterclass of a trade deadline. When you look back at this season, and when we talk about this for years to come, arguably the best trade deadline in the history of the NHL. I don't think you could have hit any more of a home run than Bill Zito did at this year's trade deadline. You get Seth Jones. Of course, you mortgage a little bit of the future, and you get Seth Jones, but you get him you get him with term left on the deal. You get some of that contract retained, and now he goes from a really disappointing tenure in Chicago to looking like he's going to be a mainstay for the Panthers for the next 5 years, and like he can be a number 1D. I think that alone was a great trade. But then Brad Marchand, you get him for pennies. No one's going to think about that first round pick. The second that turned to a first is never going to matter because they got a Stanley Cup out of it, and you don't win this Stanley Cup without Brad Marchand. A lot of times you get those trade deadline pieces that are contributors, but they play their role, they play their part, but it's not necessarily like the success or failure of the team rides on those trade deadline guys. Brad Marchand, the Panthers don't win this Stanley Cup without him. You think about what he does in the Toronto series, completely turning that series with the overtime goal when it easily could have been 3-0 Toronto in that series. And then the way he performed in Game 7. Then you think about Game 2 against the Oilers, double overtime. Panthers are looking for a hero, trying to get the series even and get it back home. Brad Marchand comes up huge. And then the way he played in Game 5 of this series, the pivotal game, was the best player on the ice. They don't win that cup without Brad Marchand, and Bill Zito continues to win with his trades. The deadline, the offseason trades, the big swings, the Kachuk trade, the Bennett trade. I mean,
Forsling on waivers, which
Forsling on waivers, which, yeah, absolutely. He had a fantastic series all around. There's nothing really negative you can say about Bill Zito and his trade acumen, and a couple that we don't even talk about, but like Brandon Montour, for example. Big risk when they get him. He was statistically the worst defenseman in hockey when they decided to give up a pick for him. Key part of last year's Stanley Cup final team. So Bill Zito continues to make this team an absolute juggernaut, and he continues to do it through the trade market. It's at a point now, if you're an opposing GM and you get a call from Bill Zito about a trade, don't even pick up the phone because you're about to get fleeced and you're going to help the Panthers win a cup.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
The Thunder took Game 5 by storm. They're in the lead. The Pacers are behind in a series for the first time this playoffs.
You are Locked On NBA Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Tyrese Halliburton has a calf strain. We do not know the severity of it yet. The MRI, as I reported, was on Tuesday night. So we will probably find out at Pacers practice on Wednesday, maybe a little before that. We'll see. What did you see from him in Game 5, and how do you feel like that transformed the series before we talk about what it could mean going forward?
Yeah, I just thought that he looked extremely uncomfortable and passive in a bad way. Obviously, you want Tyrese Halliburton, who's an excellent playmaker, to be passive, but he wasn't passing to advantages for his teammates. He was passing from his heels, really just looking to get off the ball. And this is a guy who, in my opinion, whenever he's had the most success this series, has been getting downhill. And that opens up both some tough rim finishes. You've seen him pull off some impressive reverse layups and conversions at the rim, but also opens up his passing lanes to find open shooters and to help the Pacers offense really get into a flow state. And in game number 5, he just couldn't do much of anything. And I think that it was because of his physical limitations, and it wasn't at all really due to his skill set. It's just, he's clearly playing hampered, and this is a storyline that's been brewing, since Game 2, where he was limping off the podium whenever the Thunder tied up that series, and he went on to have, some of his best games since Game 2, and then, of course, the Game 5 dud in the box score. But, you have to give him credit for gutting it out, but I think that it was pretty telling. after the game that you have more insight on, of just Rick talking about the conversations that they had to have at halftime about whether to take him out, whether to leave him in. Clearly, hat tip to Haliburton for wanting to keep playing. And after that game, why I think that we might find something out at practice and otherwise they could have sidestepped it was after the game, it felt like they were both pretty adamant that he's going to play in game 6. And now this comes out to where if they at all back off of that, then perhaps we do know what the case is with his injury, but it just sucks. And I think that Haliburton just the thing that it changes the most is his ability to get downhill, which really hampers how he can be effective.
Yeah, I thought the thing that was most noticeable in game 5, I already talked about on this show a little bit, is the ability to change direction with the ball and on the move. Like the play I keep talking about was like one of his first attacks of the third quarter. He got in the lane, he tried to pull out of the lane, and he just turned around and just stopped, right? And we've seen him in the playoffs on like 2 of his signature shots run all the way out to the three-point line. This time he just threw it to a teammate. And I was like, oh man, like he couldn't turn around and keep moving. And for a guy that jump passes, fadeaways, like a lot of his stuff is on the move, requires movement and changing of directions to be effective. And so they kind of planted him in the corner and like, oh, TJ McConnell's coming in a little earlier in the second quarter. Oh, he's coming a little earlier in the third quarter. These are not good signs. It was very clear that it had a basketball rotational seismic impact on them. He was in the game when they cut it to 2. Like he wasn't useless by any means. Lou Dort was still like, I'm going to guard you away from the play, but clearly hampered. And now you wonder, I mean, I think it's obvious if this was just any other game, he would not be playing, right? Which does suggest some level of the severity, but we'll see what the grade is. Like one of the PTs I know said if it's grade 1 or 2, I would guess he would play through it. And if it's grade 3, he won't. We'll find out again more probably the day that you guys are listening to this. In fact, there's a chance we already know, but that's where the series goes next is. I don't know how you feel, Rylan, but like going into game 5, I don't know if he re-aggravated it in game 5. He was already bothering him in game 5 because we've seen him with the tape on there, right? Doing treatment before the games, all that stuff, right? Legs in the ice after the games, all that stuff. But going into the game, no one had this idea that he was going to be that limited due to injury. And throughout the game, the Thunder and specifically Lou Dort were guarding him like he had been awesome the whole series. Now they know that he might not be awesome. So one, this changes things because we know going into the game, Tyrese Haliburton is not going to be 100%. That can change the way the Thunder defend. If he doesn't play at all, that's a different discussion. We'll like touch on that at the end of this, but like that alone changes your points of emphasis as a Thunder defense. It makes it that much harder for the Pacers and their secondary creators who will have to rise in the ranks of the creation ranks to be better. And so that is just a huge battle for the Pacers to be fighting. Even if he is playing, they can't win, but it's way, way harder.
Yeah, it does change some things for OKC. It makes some things easier in terms of decision-making, especially in the pick and roll against Haliburton, where it's like you're not going to have to blitz him as hard. You're not going to have to hedge as hard on the other side of the screen. You can just simply go under screens even because you feel like, you mentioned his change of direction. I think also it's hurt his, acceleration and deceleration, in the sense of just the tempo that he plays with, to where Lou Dort is skilled enough as a screen navigator to attack the outside hip of the screen setter, get underneath the screen, and then recover onto Haliburton before he can launch a 3. And we know his limitations getting to the rim now with this injury. So you can pretty much just put Lou Dort on him alone with no additional help whatsoever. And that leaves more talented defenders to stay home and to try to fluster Indiana's offense whenever they usually can create advantages in the pick and roll, because usually the Thunder are going to have to either switch or blitz him off the pick and roll and then show and recover to their man. And in this case, I don't think that they're going to send a ton of extra bodies at him. It's just going to be Lou Dort fighting through everything to stay with them, or Cason Wallace even could take his turn at it. If you don't feel like Haliburton can get into the paint, you can just have Cason be around Haliburton and do that same role with Lou Dort, matching up with somebody else. So that opens up one of your best, if not your very best, perimeter attack defender to go elsewhere. If you're Oklahoma City, it just opens up a lot for this Thunder defense and makes life even harder for the Pacers to game plan.
He is the guy who can throw that skip pass that actually, like, the Thunder are like, oh crap, like that was really on target. Like we have to, and that might not be there. We'll see. And this is all just guessing. Like he could look totally fine, right? But this is a huge talking point now. And so I wonder if the Pacers, if they know how limited he will be, will try to work in like, okay, he is a good catch and shoot player. Like go over there, go stand over there. Like see how much Dort's willing to sag off of you, because he can do that. I'm not saying the injured Nembhard drive and kick to Tyrese Haliburton is going to be like a key play of Game 6 of the NBA Finals, but that's not obviously something to ignore if you're the Thunder. And we've only talked about offense. Like, this is already a defender that the Thunder are picking on before the injury part of this, right? And so that's something else to think about here is he's going to stay on Dort, but like, does Dort have the power to just like bully that into points? Can the Thunder just bring in a billion more ball screens? How does that side of the floor look? Again, it didn't look so like this is impossible bad at the end of game 5. So I don't want to make this something it's not, but like if he's limited, that is something I imagine the Thunder will also try to pick at.
Yeah, I'd imagine that you'd see the Thunder open up some possessions with Lou, bringing the ball up the floor whenever the game's first beginning, just to test it out and see what that looks like. See if you can, because the Pacers have been, in my opinion, a little bit too willing to switch on these ball screens from Oklahoma City, especially when the Thunder can set them higher and starting out in their first action just past the timeline, to where if Lou Dort's the one bringing the ball up and you still are willing to give that switch whenever he brings someone to the ball, now you have Halliburton on a guy like Shea or J-Dub, and the Thunder are very comfortable playing with Lou Dort as the initiator. They especially do it out of the second half a lot. So you could see them do it in the first half because of the situation that you're talking about. Whereas ideally, yeah, Indiana would just put him on Lou, and Lou plays this off-ball three-point sniper role, and he's a streaky shooter to where you can get away with it. But if they put Lou on the ball a little bit to start this game, it can really stress test Therese Halliburton very quickly. I think that this whole saga, no matter how severe or not severe, or if he's going to be okay or not, if he's going to play in the game, he's clearly going to be hampered a little bit. To me, you need a fast start if you're Indiana, because I think that the best version of Therese Halliburton is going to be the opening tip. I think that that's going to be the very best version of the adrenaline. You just got 2 days of treatment. You're never going to be as close to 100% as you will be at the opening tip if you're Therese Halliburton and the Pacers, to where you've really got to start fast, really got to have this crowd behind you. And it's a closeout game, hardest one to win. Oklahoma City has been very bad at shooting the ball on the road. If you can have a quick start, then you can take some momentum and then carry it through to whenever that maybe some limping comes in for Halliburton and for the kind of Pacers who are beat up right now a little bit.
And there's a chance that this 10 minutes is just moot and he looks fine to start the game, right? Like at the beginning of game 5, no one realized anything was going on until he was clearly reaching for it. And obviously he's been diagnosed with something different now, but we'll see where that goes. And the other part of this is if it is too bad and he literally cannot play, Andrew Nembhard, what you got, champ? Last year against Boston, like a hero's tale that this dude was balling, beating Drew Holiday to the cup, scoring like crazy, a 30-point game. In the 29, it might have been, whatever. In the conference finals, like he is capable of that. It's not like a very nightly thing or a consistent thing, or else it would happen more often. But, I think he can do some stuff, but the passing not being there is huge against Oklahoma City. So they would need to be basically like perfect in their execution. Man, I don't even know who would start in that case. Like last year was Ben Shepherd, but I've been like, are they even going to play Ben Shepherd in this game now? He barely played last game. I guess it would probably just be Mathurin, try to get as much ball handling on the floor as you can. Actually, that does make the most sense now that I think about it. So Nembhard, Siakam, Mathurin, go cook, do your thing. Hope they can make enough of those, because the defense will have to be better and they'll have to find a way to score enough, because they can't score enough now.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
They can't. I mean, and you look at the Pacers, whenever the opportunity comes, because whether Halliburton plays or not, they're going to be in a position where he's not on the floor. Like, your hope would be that Lou Dort's a guy who's an excellent defender, and there's nothing you can take away from Lou as a defender. But just like an offensive, we think of this typically as offensive scores, but it does work in Lou's case as a defender, where the more he sees you, the more he plays against you, the more comfortable he is with your tricks and your antics. And you can kind of surprise him a little bit whenever he's first matched up with you, because he's such a guy who is used to a certain archetype, who's used to a certain player that he's matched up with, to where you have a huge body of work of what they like to do on the ball. You have a huge body of work of how they like to score. And then whenever he has to, on the fly, shift to somebody who has less of that reputation of, kind of a track record of, okay, when it is Nembhard's time to run the show, what does he look like? What spots is he trying to get to? Where is he trying to go on the floor? That's where you can get Lou off kilter a little bit until he sees it, until he kind of adjusts to it, to where, again, the fast starts is the biggest thing for Indiana.
There's a team that got thrown out of the KD sweepstakes almost immediately. The New York Knicks. They didn't want him at all.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast.
This report actually came out on Monday, but there was just so much yesterday to get to that we didn't do it. But Mark Spears on NBA Today, live from the finals, broke the news, I should say, that KD wanted the Knicks. That there was a fair bit of interest in the early stages of the offseason for Durant to head to New York. And obviously, we heard pretty quickly early on in this whole thing that they weren't interested. We kind of talked through that at the time, but you kind of add that in, Ben, with the growing sense, I would say, especially from San Antonio's standpoint right now, where they seem to be very reticent to speed up their building process, maybe actually doing better in the lottery, rejiggered their priorities a little bit. I don't necessarily know the why, but they are not as aggressive as they seem to want. And that, at the same time, appears to be KD's number one preference. So I'm not going to pretend to know just from a couple reports his exact order of what where he wanted to go, but it feels like you could make a case that the top two places he would have liked to be, both are kind of either pushing back or really slow rolling their pursuit of him. What does that tell you? Did he misinterpret this? Did the Suns do something wrong? Is it all just kind of fake negotiating in public? Like, what do you make of that idea that he could have gone 0 for 2?
I have so many thoughts on this. But first, I would say, I would like to know if there was any dialogue between the Suns and Knicks. Like, were the Knicks unwilling to part with Karl Anthony Towns to get Kevin Durant? Because that would be really eye-opening to me. Or was it they have no interest in breaking up one of OG and Josh Hart or whatever it looked like for Kevin Durant? They're like, yeah, it's not worth it to us. We don't want to break up our team to that degree. Or is it C of like, I know Kevin Durant's awesome, but like he does come with his own baggage a little bit, and you're going to deal with the off the court stuff, nothing crazy, but you're going to be seeing topics of him on on every platform because he's clapping back at fans all the time. Like, Kevin Durant he's a different guy, man. He's got a different personality. I don't think if this was Steph Curry at 37, I do think that there's more of a market for him because he's more of a lubricator. And I don't think I don't think KD's an agitator, but he also isn't willing to be the lead man. So I just think there's a lot to it, man. And so I would just go with, like, I think he just misread how much other teams think of him is what I would go towards.
I think that's totally fair. I think that he's never been confronted. This is the first time this has ever happened. You know, you think about in 2016 when he became a free agent, right? He was saying no to the Lakers, to the Celtics, to his hometown Wizards. You know what I mean? And then you go to, it sort of just came together quickly when he picked Kyrie and went to Brooklyn in the summer of 2019. But then you fast forward to the trade market in 2022 when the Suns were on the hot seat to go get him. And then it's the Raptors are nipping at their heels and the Celtics, could they trade Jaylen Brown? What the hell are we talking? Like, and now it's the reality of being a guy who's about to be 37 and is going to be highly paid and doesn't have the benefit that LeBron and Curry have, where they just get to stick with their big market competitive teams until the end if they want to. This whole thing imploded around Kevin Durant, and now he sort of has to go somewhere else because he's not going to win here. And yet he's not as desirable and as valuable at his price and at his age as he once was. So I do think it's pretty interesting. As for the Knicks, to me, the thing is, I imagine that they just valued their centers too much because, I mean, I don't think that they are in love with Karl Anthony Towns. There was some reporting right after the season that his defense frustrated his teammates. And, you know, there's always the things that come with Towns in terms of fit. But you just look around the league, and if you only got Towns and Mitchell Robinson, you probably got to keep Towns and Mitchell Robinson. You can't switch one of those two guys up, even if they're not perfect, for another forward. And we talked about that positional problem from the jump with New York. So I think that's what it was. The two packages that made the most sense all along were probably Hart plus Robinson plus stuff or Towns plus stuff. Either way, you end up getting rid of a big and bringing in another forward. So that's where it comes down. I don't think it's any big sign of disrespect to KD personally. Like they already have Bridges. They already have Anunoby. They've already made 2 big moves for forwards. The trade just didn't line up to do it the way that they were going to have to do it.
You just said that it's not disrespectful towards KD. Could I point it towards it's reasonably disrespectful? Like, he is an all-time great. I think he's a top 10 player. I don't think you have him there, but I think he's otherworldly talented. And still, even at 36 years old, 37 when the season starts, he's still pretty awesome. But teams aren't willing to gamble on their future on Kevin Durant strictly because of his age and the money.
What I think is, I feel like the Knicks would gamble. I don't think the gambling the future part is what was holding the Knicks in particular back. They've gambled their future every single offseason transaction that they've made for a while now. All in for Anunoby, all in for McHale, all in for Cat. I think that, to me, it's more of Kevin Durant's not what they needed. They couldn't guard anybody, and they weren't deep. That's their problem. And apparently they thought the coach was rubbing against the players and everything. So they're going to go out and solve coach. They're going to try to get deeper, I would guess, and they're going to try to figure out a way to either defend better or, I guess, just become so unstoppable on offense that it doesn't matter. But that brings us to the Spurs, which is a whole different type of team. I'll give you credit. Like, you've been on the idea that was one of the better matches, even though I was skeptical from the jump. But I do still think that the one part of my being a little bit having a reservation a little bit about that potential partnership is maybe what's holding the Spurs back. It's still just, are we really ready right now to go out and be competing for a championship with no chemistry between Wemby and Fox yet? Vic coming back from a freaking blood clot, which is a scary thing to do. We already have to integrate the number 2 pick, provided we're not sending it away in a trade, which they're probably not. I think that there's a clear limit. I think that they're way more in than New York is. Let's get that straight. But I think that they're also kind of sitting there, same thing. Do we want to spend the money? Do we want to try to go all in for this small window that KD has left? Do we want to accelerate things so much? So,
but for it's sorry, I just was saying, I think you're finishing up there. It's just like, I think it's a calculated risk. Like, no. And you and I have talked about this. Would I trade Castle for KD? No. Would I ask for it if I was the Suns? Yeah. Would I trade the 2 pick for KD? You would definitely say hell no. But I think that there are calculated risks in life of, like, if I send the 14th overall pick, Sohan, Vassell, and Barnes, let's say it blows up my face.
It's not about the limit of I hear you. That's not a lot. I'm not trying to say the package is too much. I'm not even really talking about the package. I'm saying what it represents to bring a 37-year-old Hall of Famer onto your team. What that says is every single thing about what we were as a team is now different. We were a team that was rebuilding and retooling around Victor Wembanyama. Now we're a team where Victor Wembanyama needs to be the 2nd or 3rd best player on a team that is expected to be in sniffing distance of the NBA Finals. That's a whole different ball game. That's a whole change of what you are as an organization in an instant when you did not expect to be doing that. So that's what I think is maybe holding back the Spurs is what use is there for, I don't know, like Jeremy Sohan. For, like, let's say they keep him in the trade. Well, is that even a guy you can afford to give minutes to anymore? Because you got to go win a title. You know what I mean? It is that's sort of where I'm at. Is the you're hitting the gas so hard, and I just don't know if they're ready to do that.
At some point, you're going to have to hit the gas. I don't think everything is gradual. The Suns went from a bubble team that didn't make the playoffs to a finals team the next year. So I don't think it hurt them. OKC was a slow growth. Indiana wasn't. Well, I guess Indiana was as well. They went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. So it's worked both ways. I'm surprised by the Spurs. I think they could have won this competition fairly easily if the Suns would not be unreasonable and ask for the 2 pick or Castle. Yeah. But I just think it's a small price to pay to be I think a legitimate contender in the West. And who knows what happens? KD's still a good defender, and you're not giving up much. But I get it.
Point
I
being,
think it's caught Kevin Durant by surprise, though.
Absolutely. That's a good way to tie a bow on it, because it is showing us that the bullseye in the middle of this is a lot smaller than I think he expected it to be. And probably than the Suns did. Because you're seeing the Spurs, hey, we're too young, we want to slow things down, we're not quite ready. And then you have the Knicks, well, we're already too all in, you don't quite fit, we don't have all the pieces to get it done, it doesn't perfectly line up financially. Two opposite ends of the thing, and yet both of them are sitting there saying the same thing. Not for us. So that's why the list is maybe smaller than people might have thought. We'll close out the show with what we think the best deal is right now, and how maybe even the two teams we just talked about, probably not the Knicks, but the Spurs for sure, could become the best deal.
The NBA playoffs are winding down, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action, so don't miss out. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. Maybe you'd like to do that. From three-pointers to steals to assists, there are so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Place that first $5 bet on the Thunder, 6.5-point favorites over the Pacers in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The potential clincher, odds on the over, plus 110, and the under, minus 152. Defense has been a theme for the Thunder all postseason and all regular season. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
LSU beats UCLA 9-5. The Tigers now start 2-0 at the College World Series, and this one was unconventional at best with the way that it all went down. The game started on Monday, as we know. The teams played 3 innings. At the end of the third, LSU had a 5-3 lead. The rains came, or the storm was coming, so the teams cleared the field. They waited out a long delay. Ultimately, after about 2.5 hours, made the decision to call it, postpone the game until Tuesday morning, a 10 a.m. Central Time resumption, and it was Case and Evans. If you were with us when the game got delayed, my feeling that I shared as we went through all the possible scenarios was Evans was 100% the right call. There might be some concern or some question about why you would go to Evans in that situation, why you wouldn't try to make it through with whoever else you might have available. And at the most basic level, it's understanding you were in the situation on Tuesday morning the same as you were on Monday night. It's still the opportunity to start 2-0, to stay in the winner's bracket. And you were in a 5-3 ball game. It was a 2-run game with 6 innings to go. And the same reason you threw Anthony Ianson, because he was your best guy available, you threw Casey Evans because he was your best guy available to get you to 2-0, which is just imperative in this tournament. I mean, we talk about it all the time. There's only 4 teams that have lost their first game at the College World Series to go on to win it. It is just imperative that you get into the winner's bracket. Can it be done? Yes. Like we saw LSU in 2023 lose that second game and come out of the loser's bracket to advance and win a national championship. It's possible, but this path is so much more manageable for college rosters. I don't need to spell that out, but it's why you go to Case and Evans. He was your best arm available, just like Ianson on Monday was your best arm available. So you went to Evans, said, we need 18 outs. Go find me 18 outs. And Evans almost got you home. He gives way after going 4 1/3 there in the 8th. He got a very casual foul out to start the 8th, and then single, wild pitch, hit by pitch. They go to Cooper Williams, who goes walk, RBI fielder's choice, it's 8-4, infield single, it's 8-5, walk, and now the bases are loaded in an 8-5 ball game. You're one swing away from being tied. Now, it was the 9-hole, but you went to get Chase Shores, 1 pitch, ground out, and it was all over but the shouting. LSU would add the insurance run in the bottom of the 8th on the RBI single by Jared Jones. And And Chase Shores would have a clean ninth, 3 ground balls to the second baseman, up and down in order, and the Tigers advance. They'll have the rest of the day off today. They'll play on Wednesday night against the winner of Arkansas UCLA, which has to play tonight.
Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
Mandatory means you got to be there, and they were. Trey Smith in the house.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
The big news of the day, Matt, I was starting to get a little bit nervous, but Trey Smith is in the house for day one of mandatory minicamp. There's been a lot of talk back and forth. My question to you is, what did this mean that he was available and participating on day one?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure we can totally know what it means yet. I mean, there's a few things we can probably glean from it. I mean, one for certain is that Trey Smith's a good teammate. I mean, that's what you're going to know if Trey Smith showed up, that was a big part of it. Because let's face it, I mean, the fine for him not showing up is pretty insignificant. It's only $104,000. Hey, that's a lot to me. It's a lot to most of you. It's less than 0.5% of his $23 million contract for this season. And then when you put it in the context of what does a $100,000 fine mean versus a 5-year deal, $100 million, $50 million guaranteed, something that he may be in the ballpark of, it's insignificant. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why that Trey Smith doesn't have to be here. The fact that he is here, I mean, one, I think it obviously tells you what his attitude is. He wants to be in Kansas City. He wants to be around this team. He wants to be doing his job. Now, the other question is that, you know, even though both sides, the Chiefs and Trey Smith's camp, have gone radio silent as far as the negotiations go, and we really don't know where they are other than, you know, what we've been left with, which is that, hey, something will get done this spring. There are 3 days left in spring. But I certainly get the sense that if these two sides were miles apart, Trey Smith wouldn't be in camp. You know, remember when Chris Jones and the Chiefs were miles apart, he was not in camp. So that's at least my sense on it, is that if these two sides didn't feel that they were close to something, or that something was going to get worked out. And I mean, hey, you know what? Accepting that maybe he plays with the franchise tag might be one of those things that they just work out. But I certainly don't think that it's a good sign and shouldn't hold a cloud over anything about Trey Smith in 2025.
I certainly hope that's the way. I hope that they can work it out. They have roughly 28 days to get that done on a long-term deal. The fact that you're here is some goodwill. That can also foster maybe some new talks, right? Maybe they have been having some discussions behind the scenes, but either way, Trey Smith being there helps. And I think it helps more than just he and Juwan or he and Creed, just understanding the buy-in, I think, especially for rookie Simmons coming in. You have Kingsley Suamati making the change to guard, competing, quote unquote, with Mr. Caliendo. I think his presence gives the O-line group its feeling of being intact. And as you said, pulling together as a unit, because come kickoff week 1, you need your 5 best out there no matter what. And I think that's what it comes down to. Are there other things that we can take away from either internally for the players or for the coaching staff of what that means?
Yeah, I thought there was a lot of things that you could kind of take away from today and maybe have some questions about, but at the same time, I think it tells you where that this team and its offensive line is, and may tell you just a little bit about the health and where everybody is as well. Pretty notable that Trey Smith's not there for OTAs, except I think he took almost maybe every single rep with the ones at right guard. And hey, this was the first look is what the Chiefs call it. So they did let some season ticket holders in and some fans in today, which is why we get to loosen up a little bit of the reporting rules. So you're going to hear some things that maybe you didn't get to hear during OTAs from us and being able to observe it. You might even hear from some season ticket holders who are going to tell you what they saw out there today. Might be some of those tweets out there. But, there was a lot of rotation. But some things did not rotate. Trey Smith at right guard, one of the things that did not rotate. Creed Humphrey at center, no rotation there. But, what you were able to see, and I think Kingsley took most, if not all, of the snaps at left guard as well. But with Trey Smith being back, it meant that Mike Caliendo was taking all of the snaps with at left guard with the twos. So now, those two guys being in the quote unquote competition, or at least Caliendo being your backup, if you're not feeling good about Kingsley, they're at least both getting reps at the same spot now. And it's not where Caliendo's working for Trey Smith at right guard. They're both working at left. I think I'm surprised that you and I did not take reps at left tackle today, Ryan, because it seemed like everybody else was. Jalen Moore mixed in. Josh Simmons took probably the plurality, maybe even the majority of snaps, but I think it was probably more like the plurality. I'm not sure he took 50%, but he probably took more than anybody else. Wanye even took a few snaps over there in the final period. Wanye took a pretty good amount. From what my eyes saw, Juwan Taylor was out there for the first period of 11 on 11, and then I think Wanye took the rest of those snaps until the final period, and then Wanye went over to the left side. Ethan Driscoll took some snaps out there at both spots. So, like I said, there's a lot of rotation right now, and some of that is just what the Chiefs do. They want guys to be ready to play. I don't think there's any doubt. Who's going to be the starter left tackle on day one? It's going to be Jalen Moore or Josh Simmons. And we're not going to decide that in minicamp. That's going to get decided in training camp, and it won't get decided until the pads come on. And that was one thing that I asked Josh Simmons today. And you can go over the Chiefs Digest. His press conference is up, and you can see it there. But I asked him, he's passed every test at this point except contact, except, going full speed, full contact, and how much is he looking forward to that? And he's like, hey, I've been wanting to do that since day one. He's been wanting to get out there and show and see what he can do. So, I'm still expecting there could be setbacks. We know that any player coming back from an injury might wake up one day with some inflammation or soreness, and you're just going to have to push through it to get confidence that you trust that knee. But, I don't know if any of those tests and barriers are going to come to Josh until you get to the part where the pads come on and you're playing for real. And it's not just footwork and speed, but it's power, because that's what he needs to be able to prove. And he's got that power. He's got that base to be able to use his strength, to use his reach. That's going to be a big part of it.
The NBA playoffs are winding down, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action, so don't miss out. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. FanDuel makes betting easy, whether it's picking your favorite team or diving into player props. Maybe you'd like to do that. From three-pointers to steals to assists, there are so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, you can combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Place that first $5 bet on the Thunder, 6.5-point favorites over the Pacers in Game 6 of the NBA Finals. The potential clincher, odds on the over, +110, and the under, -152. Defense has been a theme for the Thunder all postseason and all regular season. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today.
Finally, a positive update on the Cincinnati Bengals with Trey Hendrickson as the sides have resumed communication on Trey's contract.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast.
The report from Ben Baby and Jeremy Fowler over at ESPN that contains reason to actually be optimistic that something might get done here soon with Trey Hendrickson.
Giving Ben credit, huh? I'll let him know. No, I ain't just messing. Ben, I love you. All right. So yeah, Jeremy Fowler reporting. Notice I didn't include Ben. Again, pulling his chain. The two sides have resumed communication on his contract and future with the team. And that was the line of, what was it? Sunday? It was Sunday. By the way, shout out to everyone that wished me a happy Father's Day on our Locked On Bengals Insiders Club. Shout out to all the fathers out there that hopefully had a happy Father's Day, including Trey Hendrickson, because I'm sure his Father's Day was a bit better with this news coming out. Maybe talks had started sooner. It seemed inevitable that at some point that the sides would come together and at least have a conversation. But I don't know how far this has gone past that. I don't know how intense this is. It could be so intense that something gets done this week. It wouldn't shock me if that happened. But would it shock me if this went into training camp still? No. Nothing really outside of trading Trey Hendrickson would shock me here. I expect him to be in a Bengals uniform. I just don't know when he's going to be happy and smiling in said uniform. Hopefully it's sooner rather than later. I think that's where everybody in Cincinnati or Bengals fans are certainly feeling. I think that's how we feel from a football standpoint in putting their best team on the field. You got to have Trey. So hopefully something gets done soon. And this is just the start of a contract extension for the all-pro pass rusher.
At some point, you're right. This needed to happen. They needed to start talking about the contract again. But as we've been saying, at least in recent times here on this podcast, and as long as we've understood the reality of Trey's situation, he's under contract for this year. And that being his reality, his leverage is extremely limited. He's exercised it to the nth degree. He's done as much as he can in terms of talking to the media, showing up for that voluntary practice a couple of weeks ago and meeting with Cincinnati media, talking to Pat McAfee a couple of times, and Joe Burrow's media campaign before the Super Bowl and throughout the offseason. They, I think, have pulled every lever available to them to make this as big of a deal for Bengals fans, for the national media that's looking for something to talk about, to the point where there's more conversation about Trey Hendrickson than there is about Micah Parsons and TJ Watt, although those stories are picking up steam as the summer goes on as well. The downside to that approach is Trey Hendrickson also just was subjected to fines for training camp or for mini camp, mandatory mini camp. And that was something that he took umbrage to when he was notified that there would be fines on the supposition that means that they wouldn't have a long-term deal done by the time minicamp arrived, and they didn't. And the ideal thing here is, well, we've ramped up as much as we can from Trey Hendrickson's side. From the Bengals side, it's obviously ideal to have Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart, but Trey Hendrickson back for training camp and there for the beginning of training camp. And we've talked about this. It's more important for Shamar Stewart. Go look at our most recent episode for all of our thoughts on the Shamar Stewart situation and what's going on there. Most recent 2 episodes. I feel like we've talked about that a ton in the last week, but
I think it's 2 out of 3. I think it's 2 out of our last 3.
And before that, it was Trey Hendrickson stealing shows that we weren't planning to dedicate to Trey Hendrickson as a topic. But at least today it's good news. But the ideal here is that the beginning of communication now and the resumption of communication now during this break between mini camp and training camp is with the express goal of actually getting it done by the time training camp starts and avoiding that distraction that Joe Burrow acknowledged was a distraction going into the beginning of training camp.
Yeah, it's going to be such a huge distraction. Let's combine them together. Can you imagine if neither guy signed and Shamar's just standing there and Trey Hendrickson doesn't show up? And I don't think he will. I think that minicamp, the reason why he was like, fine, I'll be fine with fines, is he's going to go that route. I don't think this is going to be the Jamar Chase thing where Trey's just kind of standing out there waiting on a deal. This doesn't feel as nice, at least as of right now. Maybe this communication helps it. I just, now's the time. Like, I get it. You want to play hardball, negotiate, and all of those things. And I do think that that's part of it. And that's fine. I really don't care that he's not signed to this point. I would have liked the communication to be better, but I actually don't. It's not a huge deal. It's not like he's, it's a tragedy that Trey Hendrickson hasn't signed an extension yet. And at the same time, from a Super Bowl standpoint, from a fast start standpoint, Trey Hendrickson not being on the field after a full training camp because of a contract situation when the Bengals play the Browns, that would feel pretty tragic. And that would feel like a failure from a football standpoint. And I just don't want to get to that point. And so when I saw this, I'm like, okay, good. This is the first step. Hopefully there's more steps. And whether it's before July 4th, after July 4th, when everyone's rolling in, I want to ask Mike Brown during Mock Turtle Soup Day, during Media Day, about a Trey Hendrickson extension that's already done. I want to hear from Trey before training camp. And so hopefully that happens. Hopefully we're talking about a signed deal on the dotted line. And what do you think, real quick, I'm putting you on the spot here. What do you think gets it done? Like, what do you think numbers wise would get it done and get Trey to agree? Is it 1 year extension, 2 year extension? I don't think they offer a 3. I know I would probably rule that out at this point, even though that's probably what he wants.
Yeah, I don't think 1 year gets it done. So maybe 2 years is the common ground. Maybe upfront money helps. Maybe some guarantees help. Maybe they try to deal with this default of voiding of future guarantees with Trey as a trade-off for increased guarantees, and they set that precedent for Shamar Stewart. So those things all could come into it. I think the money is probably the biggest issue because this probably needs to go north of 35 or at least get to 35 million for new money. Just looking at what's happening with other edge rushers around the league and Danielle Hunter's contract, even though that's a 1 year deal, maybe they get a bit south of that number. Like that would be the best case, I would think, from a Bengals perspective is, hey, we're going to give you another year. Hey, we're going to do guarantees, but the money is going to be a touch lower. And I don't think Trey has a huge reason to go for that. On the other side, Trey is looking at $50,000 a day in training camp fines for every day of training camp he misses. And that can add up. And those are mandatory fines. And typically when players are fined for missing training camp, the team will work out some way to excuse those fines in the subsequent extension that is reached. You've seen that time and time again around the league. So that's an incentive for the sides to work together and say, hey, if we get this done, we'll find a way to get those fines paid back to you. But those fines are lingering and are mandatory, not something that the team has a choice about, at least to initially levy those fines for training camp.
Yeah, I think 2 years, give him a fat payday this year, get that money up to close to 30 million, maybe 28 million this year, and then 30 plus million, maybe 32 million or so. I get there, Bengals. Get it done. Hopefully they get it done.